The chill of the morning bit through Jon Snow's cloak, clean and sharp, a promise of colder winds to come. The yard of Winterfell was half shadow, half pale light, the sun no more than a smudge behind low clouds, but the castle was already awake. Horses stamped in their stalls, iron-shod hooves ringing against stone. Stable boys cursed and laughed. A blacksmith's hammer woke sparks from red steel. The air smelled of damp earth, wood smoke, and the faint sour tang of the kennels. Ghost moved at Jon's side, white as the new snow clinging to the tops of the walls, eyes burning red in the dimness. The dire wolf padded silent and effortless, weaving just out of reach of passing men. They watched the beast and gave him space, the way they did Jon himself. A nod, a muttered greeting, respect edged with unease. Bastard of Winterfell, their looks said. Not a Stark, not truly. Close enough to remember it. Jon's gloved hand sank into Ghost's fur, fingers closing on the warm, thick coat at the scruff of his neck. Ghost's ear twitched under his touch. The wolf tilted his head as though listening to some sound only he could hear, then settled again. Above, on the inner wall, Robb Stark strode past a line of guards, the wind tugging at his auburn hair, his cloak snapping behind him. He moved with a restless energy that Jon knew well, the same impatience that drove them both to the yard at dawn more days than not, swords in hand, sweat steaming in the cold. Today Robb had no sword, only duty, and it seemed to sit on his shoulders like an ill-fitted helm. Jon watched him pause at the crenellation, gaze roaming over the yard. He would be counting. Jon could see it in the way Robb's jaw worked. How many horses saddled, how many spears stacked, how many packs loaded. Ned Stark had ridden south with King Robert 2 days past, the great procession of banners and nobles streaming out through Winterfell's gates like a river of color spilling into the dull gray wilds of the south. The king's men had left noise and barrels and half-finished arguments behind them. Now the castle felt hollowed, quieter, as if someone had drawn out its breath and not yet let it return. Only Benjen Stark and the small group for the wall remained to depart. Jon's place among them was a certainty, as fixed in his mind as the wall itself, that impossible line of white and blue he had imagined 100 ways. He could almost see it now, if he stared north long enough, rising over the low hills and dark forests like a ghost of itself. "You're up early, Snow." Theon Greyjoy came up at his shoulder, all easy grin and careless swagger, hands tucked into the sleeves of his cloak. His black hair was bound back with a strip of leather, his beard no more than a shadow, but he already carried himself like some Southron lordling, amused by everything he saw. "I could say the same of you," Jon answered without looking at him. Theon shrugged. "Someone has to make certain our good uncle of the Night's Watch doesn't get trampled under the hooves of his own horses." He glanced sideways, smirked. "And someone has to see you off. I'll miss beating you in the yard." Jon huffed a short laugh. "In your dreams." Ghost turned his head and regarded Theon with that unsettling, unblinking stare. Theon shifted just a little, as if the weight of that gaze pressed on him. "You'll freeze up there," Theon said, a note of genuine curiosity under the jape. "Walls taller than the Harlaw cliffs, they say. Wind sharp enough to flay the skin off your bones. No women, no feasts, just snow and stones and wildlings with sheep for wives." Jon's hand tightened in the wolf's fur. "It's a place where a man can make something of himself. Take the black, serve the realm. It's honor." Theon rolled his eyes. "Honor." He spat the word lightly. "Honor doesn't keep you warm in your bed. Honor doesn't pour you ale. But you do as you like, bastard. Someone must wear black and freeze for the rest of us." Jon's jaw worked. There was an answering anger rising in him, but he swallowed it. He had learnt, slowly, that snapping only made him small in their eyes. Better to stand, to endure, to let Ghost's silence be his answer. A horn sounded from the outer yard, a low, mournful note that rolled along the stones. Benjen Stark was readying to ride. Robb leaned forward between the merlins, spotting Jon below. Their eyes met. Even at a distance Jon could read his brother's expression. A flicker of something sharper than worry, more tangled than simple farewell. Robb lifted one hand, fingers spreading in a brief, helpless gesture. Jon nodded to him once. Whatever waited at the wall, whatever his life became there, he would remember that look. "Come, ghost," he said softly. "Time to say our farewells." The direwolf's ears pricked as if at the word, and he followed as Jon turned toward the inner gate, leaving Theon's muttered jests behind him in the morning's thin light. The armory was warmer than the yard, lit by torches and the banked coals of the forge, but the heat did little to ease the knot in Jon's chest. Steel hung from the walls in tidy rows. Mail shirts and greaves, swords and axes, the tools of the life he'd been born to but could not claim. He ran a thumb along the edge of a freshly whetted blade, felt the faint bite on his skin, and thought of the wall again, of weight and purpose and the simple clarity of an oath spoken once and forever. Robb pushed through the door with more force than it needed, the heavy wood banging against the stone. Ghost's head came up in a flash of white, a low rumble curling from his chest, but he settled when he saw who it was. "You weren't in the hall?" Robb said, his breath quick, as if he'd crossed the castle at a run. "I looked in the yard, the kennels. Luwin thought you might be here." Jon slid the sword back into its scabbard. "I was seeing to my gear." Robb's eyes flicked to the small bundle of possessions wrapped in rough spun on the work table. A pair of worn gloves, a whetstone, a rolled cloak. The sight of them seemed to steady something in him, or perhaps it broke it. "You're really going," he said quietly. "That was always the plan," Jon answered. He tried to keep his voice level. "I can't stay here." "Why not?" Robb stepped closer, anger sparking under the words. "You say that as if Winterfell has cast you out." "Father." "Father is in King's Landing." Jon cut in, sharper than he meant. "And I am not his son. Not like you." The words hung there, bitter and familiar. Jon had tasted them enough times in his own thoughts. Saying them aloud felt like spitting in his own face. Robb's mouth twisted. "You're my brother," he said, "in everything that counts." Jon wanted to believe that. Some part of him had always done. The rest remembered Catelyn's eyes on him at table, cool and distant. The way certain lords said Eddard's bastard with a hint of something else in their voices. The way the world arranged itself, always, into those with names and those without. "The Night's Watch is a chance," Jon said. "A place where it doesn't matter whose son I am, only what I am." "You think wearing black will make them forget?" Robb demanded. "You think the men on that wall won't see you and say, 'There, that's some northern Lord Snow come to hide behind his vows?' You think they won't remind you every time you falter?" Jon opened his mouth, then closed it. He had not considered that. In his head, the watch had been clean, simple. An order of brothers, bound by oath. There had been no room in that vision for sneers, for names spoken with contempt. Perhaps that had been foolish. "There is war coming," Robb went on, and now the anger had gone, leaving behind a raw urgency that made Jon's skin prickle. "Lannisters in the south, whispers of trouble in the east. Father will walk a knife's edge in the capital, and we are here, in the north, with the weight of the Stark name and no one to share it. You would leave me to hold Winterfell alone. You have Maester Luwin," Jon said, though the words sounded thin in his own ears. "Ser Roderick, Mother, the lords will follow you." "They will follow me because I am my father's son," Robb replied. "But you know them, Jon. You've watched them when they think we aren't looking. Some of them see a boy when they look at me. A boy with a crown in his future, maybe, but a boy still. They would test me, pull at the seams, try to see where I give. And you?" He stepped closer still, close enough that Jon could see the faint freckles across his nose, the strain at the corners of his eyes. "You never give. When you stand at my shoulder, they stand straighter. They remember we are not alone." Ghost shifted, as if sensing the turn in the air, and brushed against Jon's leg. The contact was grounding, solid. Jon stared at Robb, at the fear hidden under his defiance, and realized that he had never truly imagined Robb without him. They had been boys together, then young men together. The wall had always been somewhere else, a story told by Uncle Benjen. Winterfell had been the only thing that was real. To leave Robb had been like imagining his own bones stripped from his flesh. "I don't know if I can stay," Jon said, barely more than a whisper. "Your mother." "My mother is not the only voice in this castle," Robb said, jaw hardening. "And she has never been yours to answer to. I am, or I will be soon enough. Let me stand where father would stand in this. Let me choose you." The torchlight threw strange shadows across his face, making him seem older, harsher. Some future Robb with lines carved by command and loss. Jon wondered how much of that future was already waiting, fixed as any Stark in the crypts. "Talk to father," Robb urged. "Before you ride, ask if there is another path. If he says no, then go to your black brothers with my blessing. But if he sees what I see..." Jon pulled his arm free, not in anger but because he needed to breathe. "He rides with the king," he said. "We leave for the wall at first light. There is no time." Robb's eyes blazed. "Make time. He is your father." That word, offered without hesitation, struck harder than any blow. Jon looked down at Ghost, at the gleam of red eyes in the dim room, and thought of another set of eyes, gray and steady, regarding him from beneath a heavy brow. He had spent so many years pretending he did not care that Ned Stark had never spoken his mother's name, that he had forgotten there might be other words the man had never thought to say. "I will try," Jon said. Robb's shoulders sagged in relief, as if he had been holding up half the castle with his bare hands and had only now set it down. "Good," he breathed. "Good." For a moment they simply stood together, the clatter of distant hammers and the murmur of voices filtering in from beyond the thick walls. Then Robb forced a crooked smile onto his face. "If you do stay," he said, "I shall have to find some way to keep you from making me look the fool in front of the men." Jon snorted. "That would be a hard task." "Arrogant bastard," Robb said, but there was fondness in it. They walked out of the armory side by side, Ghost a pale shadow between them, the weight of choice settling over Jon's shoulders like a second cloak. By the time Jon found the courage to seek out Ned Stark, the light had gone thin and yellow, slanting through the narrow windows of the tower. The hand of the king's new badge, heavy and strange, lay on the desk amid scattered parchments, its metal catching the flicker of the candles. The sight of it underscored everything Jon already knew. His father was not only Lord of Winterfell now, but something more dangerous, more precarious. A guard at the door had tried to turn him away. "Lord Stark is with the king's men," the man had said, shifting uneasily under Jon's steady gaze. "He gave orders not to be disturbed." Jon had nearly retreated then. It would be easier to say nothing, to ride north with Uncle Benjen and let the world make of him what it would. But Robb's words had taken root, and once planted, they refused to be cut free. "It is important," Jon had said. "Tell him it's his son." The guard's eyes had flickered, uncertain. Then he had nodded and slipped inside. A moment later he returned and swung the door wider. "He will see you," the man said. Inside, the room smelled of wax and parchment and the faint iron of ink. Ned Stark sat behind his desk, the lines in his face carved deep by a long day of listening to King Robert's booming laughter and longer silences in between. He looked tired, but his back was straight. He was still wearing his riding leathers, the fur at his collar damp from melted snow. "Jon," he said when the door closed. His voice was steady, giving nothing away. "Father." The word felt different here, in this room that had always belonged more to the Lord than to the man. Jon stood just inside the threshold, suddenly conscious of every threadbare patch on his tunic, the mud on his boots. He had rarely been summoned here. Robb had sat in that chair more often, alongside Ned and Maester Luwin, listening to talk of harvests and border disputes. Ned gestured to the chair opposite. "Sit." Jon did, awkwardly, hands knotted in his lap. Ghost curled up by the door, massive head resting between his paws, eyes watchful. "I had thought you would be with Benjen," Ned said, studying him. "He leaves on the morrow. That's why I came." Jon swallowed. To speak of that. Ned's gaze sharpened. If you have changed your mind, he said slowly, say so plain. How many times had Jon imagined this moment? He had pictured his father's face set in stone, his voice unyielding. You chose this path, he would say in Jon's mind. You insisted. There is no turning back. To be offered a choice instead left him unsteady. I thought I knew what I wanted, Jon said. The watch, Uncle Benjen spoke of it and it sounded clean, honorable. A place where I could be more than... The words stuck in his throat. More than a bastard, Ned finished quietly. Jon looked up, startled. There was no anger in Ned's eyes, no shame, only a tired sorrow that Jon had no name for. You are not the first to seek the black for that reason, Ned went on, nor the last. The wall attracts men who hope to leave something of themselves behind. Names, sins, the weight of expectations. He tapped a finger lightly on the map. It is not so simple as that. So Robb said, Jon murmured. Ned's brows rose a fraction. Robb spoke to you about this? Yes, he asked me to talk to you. He says Winterfell needs me, that he needs me. Jon hesitated, then forced himself on. He thinks the lords take him more seriously when I'm at his back. That together we might. He broke off, feeling foolish. What was he saying? That two boys could hold the north against whatever storms came. It was the sort of thing only songs believed. Ned was silent long enough that Jon wondered if he had gone too far. Then the Lord of Winterfell leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. When Robert leaves, Ned said, he leaves me as his hand. That is no small thing. It means I take my family south into a court full of vipers and smiling knives. It means I leave the north in other hands. Robb's, Jon said. As it should be. As it must be, Ned agreed. He is my heir. Winterfell's future rests on his shoulders whether he wishes it or no. But he is 15, Jon. A good boy, a brave one, but still untested. Men like the great Jon, like Lord Glover, like Roose Bolton, will measure him with their eyes and their tongues both. Some will find him wanting. Others will see in him a chance to gain more than his father ever gave them. He paused, fingers steepled. I had thought the watch a fitting place for you. A hard life, but an honorable one, where no man could deny you your worth. I saw the way your eyes lit when Benjen spoke of it. I thought, perhaps here is something I can give my son, when I can give him so little else. The softness in that last word cut deeper than any rebuke. But you have your brothers, Ned continued, and they have you. If Robb believes your presence will steady the north when the king's court pulls me south. He let out a long breath. It is no small thing he asks, nor is it mine alone to refuse. Jon stared at him. Are you saying I could stay? I am saying, Ned replied carefully, that if you wish to remain at Winterfell, I will not force you to take the black. I will speak to Benjen, to Maester Luwin. There are ways a younger son of the Stark blood can serve, bastardy or no. You would have duties here, responsibilities. There would be those who resent it. His mouth tightened at the thought of Catelyn. But Robb's judgment matters, and yours. The world seemed to shift under Jon's feet. For so long the wall had been a single, stark road stretching before him. Now another path branched off, shadowed and tangled but lit by faces he knew. Robb's, flushed with hope. Arya's, intent and fierce. Bran's, laughing as he scrambled along the broken tower. Your mother, Jon began. Ned's gaze flicked to the side, just for a heartbeat, and Jon understood that some battles even lords could not win. Outright, I will speak with her, Ned said. There was steel beneath the gentleness now. Whatever has passed between the two of you, know this. It is not your fault. The circumstances of your birth are on my head, not yours. I will not see you punished for my sins. Jon had never heard him speak so plainly of it. Heat pricked at his eyes. He blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. If I stay, he said hoarsely, what then? I cannot inherit. I cannot marry some lord's daughter and bring her name here. What place is there for me? Winterfell is more than a seat and a line of succession, Ned replied. It is land and people and old promises. Robb will need men he can trust utterly. A castellan in truth, not just in name. A commander of men in the yard. A voice in his ear when mine is leagues away. You are no stranger to any of that. You have sat with me in this room, listened more than you spoke. You see people clearly, Jon, for all that you doubt yourself. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on Jon's face. If you choose the wall, you choose it for life. There is no turning back from that. If you choose Winterfell, there will be days when you wish yourself 1,000 leagues away from it. But you will stand where Stark blood stands, and that has weight. Think well before you answer. Ghost rose silently and came to rest his head against Jon's knee. Jon's fingers curved into the thick fur of his neck, grounding himself. I thought there was no choice, Jon said. Only one way forward. There is always a choice, Ned said, though we do not always like the price of it. Jon looked down at the direwolf, then at the map of the north spread between them. Rivers and mountains and names he had known since childhood. Last Hearth, Torrance Square, Carhold. The wall marked in sharp blue ink, a line between the world he knew and some other place where he might become someone else. I don't want to run from who I am, Jon said, more to himself than to Ned. If I stay, it's not because I'm afraid. It's because Robb asked. Because Winterfell. Because you. His voice failed. Ned's expression softened. For a moment the Lord fell away, leaving only the father, older and more uncertain than Jon had ever allowed himself to imagine. Whatever you choose, Ned said, you will have my blessing. But choose with your eyes open, not out of hurt or pride. Jon drew a long breath and let it out slowly. Pride had driven him toward the wall, yes, but there had been hurt there too. The way Catelyn's gaze slid past him. The way the hall sometimes seemed to close its doors around him. He had thought to outrun it. Instead, Robb had put another possibility before him. Not escape, but purpose. Not leaving, but staying on his own terms. I will stay, Jon said. The words surprised him by how right they felt once spoken, as if they had been in him all along, waiting for his tongue to catch up. Ned nodded once, sharply, as if that settled something within him. So be it, he said. I will tell Benjen. You will speak with Maester Luwin in the morning. There is much to be done before we ride south. We, Jon echoed. Ned's mouth quirked. Do you think I will leave Winterfell in the hands of boys without at least setting them on the right path? You and Robb will sit with me tonight. Hear the last of the petitions before the king departs. You wish to be treated as a man. Men hold responsibility as well as swords. Jon's heart thudded, a heavy, aching beat. Yes, father, he said. As he rose to go, Ned's voice stopped him at the door. Jon, he turned. Ned was watching him, something unspoken in his eyes. I am proud of you, he said, the words slow and deliberate, as if they had weighed on his tongue for years. Whatever my failings, know that. For a moment Jon could not speak at all. He managed a rough nod, then fled the room before he could make a fool of himself with tears. Ghost followed, silent as snowfall. The room where Bran slept had grown smaller with each day he did not wake. The shutters were drawn tight against the cold, the air inside heavy with the sense of tallow and herbs and the lingering copper of old blood. Candles ringed the bed, their flames guttering when the door opened, throwing long shadows that danced over the boy's still face. Bran lay as he had lain since his fall from the broken tower. Pale, too thin, lashes dark against his cheeks. His chest rose and fell with slow regularity, a quiet miracle that had done little to ease the gnawing fear in anyone's heart. A strip of clean linen peeked from under the edge of his nightshirt, sharp against his throat. Maester Luwin changed the dressings every day, speaking of bones knitting and the mysterious ways of the body, but Bran did not stir. Catelyn Stark sat beside him, her hair unbound, shadows hollowing her eyes. She hardly seemed to notice when Jon slipped inside, Ghost pausing on the threshold as if reluctant to intrude. A tray of untouched food cooled on the table, the bread gone hard, the stew congealed. "Lady Stark," Jon said softly. She flinched at the sound of his voice, a small, involuntary movement that she smoothed away a heartbeat later. Her fingers tightened around Bran's limp hand. "What do you want?" she asked. Her voice was rough, as if she'd spent the day shouting or weeping. Jon did not know which. He could have turned away. It would have been easier. Catelyn's grief wrapped the room like a cloak, heavy and prickling, and he had never been welcome in its folds. But he thought of Bran, of the boy who had followed him up the walls, who had mimicked his sword strokes in the yard with a branch for a blade. "I came to say goodbye," Jon said. "To Bran." Her gaze flicked to the bundle he carried, the cloak folded over his arm. "You're leaving, then?" she said. There was no surprise in it. "Running from this house the way your father runs to his king." Anger flared, hot and sudden, but he tamped it down. "Lord Stark rides in service to his liege," Jon replied. "And I am not leaving. Not now." That caught her. She stiffened, eyes flashing to his face. "What?" she demanded. "I spoke with him," Jon said. "About the Night's Watch, about staying at Winterfell. He has agreed. I will not ride north with Uncle Benjen." For a heartbeat, there was something like alarm in her expression. Then it hardened into the familiar, cold resentment. "Of course," she whispered. "Of course he has agreed. Why should my husband not surround my son with reminders of his own faithlessness?" Jon's knuckles whitened on the bundle. "I did not come to quarrel with you," he said. "I came to see Bran." "Then see him," she snapped, "and go. There will be no place for you in this room when he wakes." The words landed like stones. Jon knew better than to argue. He stepped closer to the bed, the candles throwing his shadow long across Bran's small form. "Hey, little brother," he said, forcing a crooked smile. "You've chosen a fine time to sleep." Bran did not stir. Jon reached down, ignoring the way Catelyn's gaze burned into him, and brushed a lock of hair from Bran's forehead. His fingers were clumsy, but the gesture was gentle. "You'll wake," Jon murmured. "You're too stubborn not to. Robb will need someone to climb for him when he's too busy pretending to be a lord." He swallowed. "And I'll be here. When you do, I won't be gone after all. We can spar if you like. Once you're mended." The lie scraped his tongue. He had seen enough broken men in the yard to know that some wounds healed only into new shapes of pain. But he would not speak that here. "You listen to Maester Luwin," Jon went on, voice growing softer. "And to your mother. She loves you." His eyes flicked up, unbidden, to Catelyn's face. For a moment he thought he saw something else there, some flicker of conflict. Then it vanished. He straightened, stepping back. The room felt close, the air thick. Ghost whined quietly, a sound almost too low to hear, and the hair along his back rose. Jon glanced at him, then at Catelyn. "I will do my duty," Jon said. It surprised him that he said it to her and not to Ned or Robb. "Whatever that is here, you have my word." Catelyn's lips pressed together. "Your word," she repeated faintly, as if tasting it and finding it strange. She looked at Bran, at the narrow line of his shoulders beneath the furs, and when she spoke again her voice had lost some of its edge. "If you truly mean to stay, then stay out of his way. Don't fill his head with tales of running off to the Watch or to the south. Let him be what he was born to be. A son of Winterfell," Jon said. Her eyes met his, sharp as glass. "Yes." For a heartbeat he thought she might say something else. Ask why he really stayed, perhaps, or whether he expected gratitude. But the moment passed. Her attention folded back inward, around Bran, around her own private storm. Jon left as quietly as he had come. Ghost slipped out after him, casting one last look back at the still boy on the bed. In the corridor, the air felt thinner, easier to breathe. Jon leaned against the cold stone, closing his eyes. He had expected to feel relief having made his choice. Instead, he felt as if he had stepped onto a new, narrow path with sheer drops on either side. Ghost nudged his hand, insistent. Jon looked down at him and found, in those red eyes, no judgment, only a steady animal certainty. Wherever Jon went, the wolf would follow. "I'm staying," Jon said aloud, if only to hear it again. "Whatever she thinks, whatever anyone thinks." His words faded into the dimness, swallowed by Winterfell's stones. Somewhere above, a bell told the hour. Night was coming on, and with it the last feast before the king's party rode south. Duty, he thought, straightening. If he was to share in Robb's, he might as well begin today. The feast that night seemed to stretch on forever, all noise and light and the heavy scent of roasted meat. The king had demanded one last revel before his departure, and Winterfell had obliged, its great hall thrumming with song and shouted toasts and the clatter of trenchers. King Robert sat at the high table beside Ned, his broad, bearded face flushed with wine. He laughed at some jest, slamming a meaty hand down hard enough to rattle the cups. The sound echoed under the rafters, momentarily drowning the music from the minstrels in the corner. Cersei Lannister sat at his other side, her green eyes cool, her golden hair a bright fall in the candlelight. The Stark bannermen watched the royal couple with a mingling of awe and suspicion. Jon sat one place down from Robb, closer to the dais than he had ever been before. It felt wrong, as if he had slipped into someone else's chair. The carved wood dug into his back in unfamiliar places. Ghost lay under the bench at his feet, unseen but not unfelt. Now and then Jon felt a warm flank press against his boots, a reminder that he was not alone in this altered space. Ned had not announced Jon's choice. There had been no grand declaration, no speech. He had simply said, in that low, steady voice of his, that plans had changed. Benjen would ride north without Jon. Winterfell would keep one more wolf. The vassal lords had reacted in their own ways. Lord Glover had given a brisk nod, as if filing the fact away with 100 others. Galbart Glover's younger brother had raised a brow, his eyes appraising. The great Jon had roared something approving about keeping the fierce one with the ghost wolf, where he could see him. Roose Bolton had said nothing at all, but his pale gaze had flickered between Jon and Robb as if measuring the distance. "Eat," Robb muttered now, leaning toward Jon as platters of venison and trout came down the table. "You look like a condemned man." "I feel like one," Jon replied under his breath, but he took up his knife all the same. The meat was good, the ale better. It sat heavy in his stomach, but the familiar act of eating steadied him. Across the hall, Theon raised his cup in a mocking salute. Jon met it with a flat stare. Theon's smirk widened. He might jape about honor and black cloaks, but Jon could see the quickness in his eyes, the way he had already begun recalculating his place in this new arrangement. If Jon stayed close to Robb, Theon's role at his side shifted. The Islander did not like being displaced. "Tomorrow the king rides," Ned said, his voice carrying just enough to reach Jon and Robb. "And I with him. It may be some time before I see this hall again." "You'll be back soon," Robb said. He put a boldness into the words that his fingers, tight around his cup, belied. "The king cannot do without you for long. There is little in King's Landing that truly cannot do without anyone," Ned replied dryly. "Except perhaps the gold. Courts turn as they will, with or without my hand on the wheel." His gaze grew distant for a moment, then sharpened again. "But the North must not drift. While I am away, you will hear the petitions, settle disputes, see the accounts. Luwin will guide you. Ser Roderick will see to the yard. And Jon." He turned his eyes on his bastard son. "Jon will stand beside you." Robb lifted his chin. "Aye, father." Jon swallowed his discomfort. "I will do my best," he said. "That is all any man can do," Ned replied. His mouth softened. "Remember, you are Starks, both of you. Men will look to you in ways you do not expect. Give them a firm place to stand." Later, as the hall grew hotter and the laughter more raucous, Jon slipped away to the edge of the crowd. Ghost padded after him, drawing glances and a wide berth. He watched Jory Castle drink with the other guards, listened to a minstrel sing of the last dragon lords, caught snatches of lordly conversation about grain levies and border raiders. He felt apart from all of it, and yet more entangled than ever. If he had been leaving, this would have been a farewell feast. He would have taken his fill of ale, perhaps stolen a kiss in some shadowed corner, then ridden out under a sky cold and clear with purpose. Instead, the world was muddier. He was neither leaving nor fully belonging, caught in a limbo that might endure for the rest of his days. Arya found him by the pillar, her face smudged, her hair half out of its braid. "Is it true?" she demanded without preamble. "You're not going?" Jon's heart twisted. "It is," he said. She let out a whoop that drew several startled looks. "Good," she declared. "I knew you wouldn't leave me with Sansa and Septa Mordain and no one sensible to talk to." Jon could not help but smile. "Robb might take offense at that." "Robb's too busy trying to look lordly," Arya said, wrinkling her nose. "You still know how to climb and sneak." Jon ruffled her hair, earning a scowl and a half-hearted swat. "Mind you don't say such things in front of him," he said. "He'll think you don't trust him to be a proper lord." Arya's expression sobered. "Do you?" she asked. Jon looked back toward the high table, where Robb sat straight-backed beside their father, listening intently to some low-voiced comment. He said, "I do. But even the best lord needs someone to tell him when he's being an idiot." "That's your job," Arya said decisively. "You're good at it." He laughed. "I suppose I am." Across the hall, Catelyn Stark had not touched her wine. Her eyes found him now and then, cool and assessing. Jon met her gaze once, for the barest heartbeat, and saw in it not only dislike, but calculation. She understood what his staying meant as well as any of the lords. Another wolf at Robb's side, another center of gravity in Winterfell. He did not know whether that frightened or angered her more. When the feast finally began to break apart, when the king stumbled to his bed with the help of 2 guards and Cersei V. Unished in a swirl of green and gold, Jon stepped out into the courtyard. The cold hit him like a slap, clearing the fog of heat and noise from his head. Above, the sky was a low, unbroken gray, the stars hidden. Ghost trotted ahead, breath steaming. Jon followed him to the battlements, where the wind cut sharper. Below, torches burned at the gates, men on watch pacing their patrols. Beyond the walls, the dark trees of the Wolfswood stood like a silent sea. Tomorrow the king would ride south. Ned Stark with him. Jon remained. He rested his hands on the rough stone and let the wind tear at him, welcoming the sting. Somewhere in the dark a wolf howled, the sound rolling over the fields like a promise. Morning came gray and thin, the kind of light that made it hard to tell where sky ended and snow began. The yard was quieter than it had been on the day the king arrived, but there was still a sense of occasion. Men moved with more care, boots crunching on frost-hardened earth. The horses stamped and tossed their heads, breath pluming in the chill air. The men of the Night's Watch were easy to pick out, their black cloaks a stark contrast to the browns and grays of the Stark men. Their armor was plainer, their faces harder. Some were old, some not much older than Jon. All bore the same look of resigned endurance, as if they had long ago made their peace with the cold and the long, empty miles of the wall. Jon Stark sat his horse at their head, the sigil of the direwolf still sewn in black thread on the breast of his cloak. His features were sharper than Ned's, his beard trimmed close, his eyes pale and keen. "You're certain?" he had asked Jon when Ned told him of the change. There had been no judgment in it, only a soldier's practicality. "The wall will not vanish if you choose to stay. Duty comes in many guises." "I'm certain," Jon had said, "we're near enough." Now, as the small column formed at the gate, Jon swung his gaze to where Jon stood with Robb and Ned at the foot of the steps. His lips twitched in something like a smile. "Take good care of your lord brother," he called. "I'll not have Robb writing me that you've let him mishandle the North." "I'll do my best, uncle," Jon replied. The words felt easier now. "And you watch for shadows that move where they shouldn't." Benjen's eyes flicked briefly to Ghost, then back. Always do. Ned stepped forward a half-pace. Give my regards to Lord Commander Mormont, he said. Tell him the Starks remember their vows, even when we cannot send our sons. Benjen inclined his head. I'll tell him, he said. Though he'll be sorry to lose the lad. We need every sword we can get. His gaze lingered on Jon for another heartbeat. In it Jon saw a question that would now never be answered, an alternate life fading into the mist. Jon wondered briefly what sort of man he might have become on top of that vast wall of ice. His days measured in patrols and long, cold watches. The thought hurt, but not as sharply as he had feared. Robb bumped his shoulder lightly. He'll live, Robb said under his breath. And so will you. The great oak and iron gates creaked open, chains rattling. The road beyond stretched north and east, vanishing into low hills dusted white. Open the gate, the sergeant-at-arms called, as if the command were not already obeyed. Benjen raised his hand, then lowered it. The column moved forward at a walk, hoofs striking sparks from the stones. The black cloaks fluttered, then settled. The men of the watch did not look back. Ghost watched them go, ears pricked, a faint whine trembling in his throat. Jon felt it in his own chest. He reached down to rest his hand on the wolf's neck. Another life, he murmured. Another Jon Snow. Not ours, Robb said. Ned's gaze was on the receding riders, but his voice came low. The wall will still stand tomorrow, he said. There will be need of men there always, but there is need here as well. Never forget that. As the gates swung slowly shut, cutting off the sight of Benjen and his men, Jon felt something settle inside him. The path to the wall, the one he had walked in his imagination for so long, was gone now, at least for a time. In its place was the cold comfort of stone under his feet, the weight of Winterfell's towers at his back. When the last echo of hooves died away, Ned turned to his sons. I leave on the morrow, he said. Today we begin. Holding court was not like sparring in the yard, Jon decided. In the yard, you could see your opponent's blade, feel the weight and angle of it as it met your own. Here, everything was words and glances and the subtle shift of shoulders along the benches. The hall was less crowded than it had been during the feast. Only a handful of minor lords had remained behind, most of them men with land close to Winterfell who could afford to ride home on short notice. The rest of the audience were small folk. Farmers, shepherds, hunters in patched cloaks and rough boots, their faces wind-burned and lined. Ned sat in the high seat, cloak thrown back, sword resting in its scabbard at his side. He listened more than he spoke, as Jon had always seen him do, head slightly inclined, eyes steady. Robb sat to his right, back very straight, fists tight on the arms of his lesser chair. Jon sat to his left, Ghost at his feet, the direwolf's presence as much a ward as any drawn blade. Maester Luwin stood a little way off, a scroll in his hands and a sympathetic half-smile on his face. He had greeted Jon that morning with no surprise at all, as if he had always expected the boy to end up here. The Starks have many sons, he had said, tying a new leather thong around one of his chain links. The North will not lack for them. Now Luwin cleared his throat and called the first petitioner, an old man with a stooped back and hands gnarled like roots. He came forward leaning on a staff, his cap twisting in his fingers. My lord, he began, eyes fixed on Ned. I come from a farm near the White Knife, if it please you. My neighbor's cows broke through the fence and trampled my barley. He says the fence was poorly set. I say his beasts are half wild and he should mend his own damn walls. He flushed, begging your pardon. Ned glanced at Jon and Robb. It was a small movement, but the meaning was clear. Listen, learn. What say you, Robb? Ned asked, his tone mild. Robb swallowed. A fence is the boundary, he said. It's the farmer's duty to keep his beasts within it. And whose duty is it to keep the fence sound? Ned asked. The one whose land it marks? Robb hazarded. Between neighbors, fences are the work of both, Ned said. He looked at the old man. You will mend the wall together. Your neighbor will pay you in grain for what his beasts ruined. Half the value of the barley, no more, no less. Luwin will note the measure. If the fence is broken again, the fault and the cost will be his alone. See that you keep it sound." The old man bowed, relief flooding his features. "Aye, my lord. Thank you." Robb let out a slow breath when the man had gone. "That seemed simple," he said under his breath. "Most of it is," Ned replied quietly. "Men quarrel over small things as often as great ones. Justice is in knowing when to weigh a man's intent and when to simply divide the bread." The next case was a poacher taken in the wolfswood with 3 rabbits in his snares, hiding deep in the underbrush. The man was thin, his eyes sunken. "I've no children to feed," he said when asked. "But I've an old mother. She coughs blood. The Godswood priest says she'll not see spring. I thought to give her meat while I still could." "Poaching is still a crime," Ser Roderick muttered. "So is letting an old woman starve under your protection," Ned said. He studied the man. "You will work on the kennels for a month," he decreed at last. "No pay, only food and board. Your mother will receive a measure of barley from the Winterfell stores. If you're caught poaching again after that, I'll take a hand." "I trust one won't have to." The man's shoulders shook once. "No, my lord. Thank you, my lord." Through it all, Jon watched. He watched how Ned balanced mercy and firmness, how he listened not only to words but to the way they were spoken. He watched how the hall reacted, the murmurs of approval or the stillness that accompanied a harsher sentence. He saw Robb's fingers ease on the chair as his brother began to get the rhythm of it. When a dispute came before them about boundary stones between 2 smallholders, both red-faced and shouting over each other, Ned turned, without warning, to Jon. "What would you do here, Jon?" he asked. Dozens of eyes swung toward him. Jon felt them like pricks of ice on the back of his neck. He fought the instinct to shrink, to let the answer pass him by. "Walk the land," he said after a moment. "See where the stones lie. Ask the men in the nearest village where they have driven their herds for the last 10 years. Men's memories are long when it comes to grazing and short when it comes to paper." Ned's mouth curved faintly. "Just so," he said. "You will do that tomorrow. Take 2 men and speak to the villagers. Judge fairly. Whatever you decide, both will abide by it." The 2 farmers sputtered a little, but under Ned's calm gaze they bowed and stepped back. Jon exhaled. The task seemed small-measured against the weight of the crown in King's Landing, but it was real. A man's livelihood rested, in some small way, on his judgment. As the day wore on and the petitions dwindled, Jon found his shoulders loosening. The hall, which had always seemed so vast and distant from the lower tables, felt narrower from this vantage, more human. The people who came forward were not faceless subjects but men and women he recognized from market days, from the yard, from passing in corridors. Winterfell was not just stone. It was them. When at last the final petitioner left and Maester Luwin rolled up his scroll, Ned pushed himself to his feet. "You see now," he said, looking from Robb to Jon, "what it is to hold a lord's seat. Not glory, not songs. Work, day upon day." Robb wiped at his brow. "I think I prefer the yard," he admitted. "You will have both," Ned said dryly. "The North is generous in its demands." His eyes lingered on Jon. "You did well," he added. Jon felt a warmth that had nothing to do why. The hearth fire. "I only watched," he said, "and spoke when asked," Ned replied. "That is more than some lords manage. Remember that listening is as much a part of ruling as speaking." As the hall emptied, Robb clapped Jon on the shoulder. "You were right about the farmers," he said. "They'd have fought about those stones until one of them burned the other's field." Jon shrugged, uncomfortable under the praise. "I've heard the talk in the village," he said. "They'll tell you their grudges if you sit still long enough." "Then we'll both have to sit still more often," Robb said. "We have much to learn." Ghost yawned, flashing a line of sharp teeth, and thumped his tail. Jon bent to scratch behind his ears. "Looks like you're part of this too," he murmured. The direwolf blinked slowly, as if to say he already knew. The day of the king's departure dawned with a thin, mean rain that turned the yard to slick mud and set the horses to rolling their eyes. By afternoon, it had cleared to a brittle cold, the kind that made each breath feel like cracking glass. Jon and Robb watched from the ramparts as the royal procession formed below. Bright pennants snapping in the wind, polished armor gleaming, servants bustling like ants. King Robert rode at the front on a massive black destrier that seemed almost too small beneath his girth. His cloak was a deep blue, the crowned stag embroidered in gold at his back. Beside him, Ned looked stark and uncompromising in gray and white, a wolf among lions and stags and crimson cloaks. "They look small," Robb said after a while, squinting down the length of the King's Road. "From here, everyone does from far enough away," Jon replied. It was true. Even the king, for all his noise and appetite, was just another man on a horse when seen from the walls of Winterfell. Banners that had filled the yard with color now fluttered like scraps, the heraldry blurred at distance. The road wound away south through low hills and sparse forest, swallowing them little by little. Sansa stood at the gate below with Arya at her side, both girls stiff in their cloaks. Catelyn was there too, flanked by Septa Mordain and Maester Luwin. Bran's absence gaped like a missing tooth among them. A horn sounded, long and low, and the gate creaked open. The procession began to move. Wheels rumbled, harness jingled. The distant murmur of voices rose and fell. Ned turned in his saddle and looked back up at the walls. Even from this height, Jon could feel the weight of that gaze. He straightened unconsciously. Beside him, Robb did the same. For a long heartbeat, father and sons regarded each other across the distance, words unspoken and unnecessary. Then Ned raised his hand. It was not a grand gesture, not a kingly wave, just a small, precise motion, fingers spreading slightly. Robb lifted his own in answer. Jon did too, his fist closing into a promise. "We'll hold it," he thought. "We'll hold this place for you until you return, however long that takes." Then the column turned, the horses' hooves ringing on the stones, and the moment was over. The royal party passed under the gatehouse and out onto the King's Road, a bright snake of color coiling away through the fields until the last glimmer of steel vanished beyond the next rise. The silence that followed felt strange. Winterfell had not been quiet since the king's arrival. Now the emptiness rang in Jon's ears. "That's that," Robb said finally. His breath smoked in the air. "No more king's feasts. No more Lannister looks. No more king's boar hunts in our woods. Either," Jon added. Robb snorted. "The deer will be grateful." They stood together a while longer, watching the road as if it might suddenly spit the party back again. It did not. Only a few crows wheeled overhead, their harsh cries cutting through the stillness. "Feels different," Robb said quietly, "as if everything's shifted, but nothing's moved." "It has," Jon said. "You're the Stark in Winterfell now." Robb made a face. "You say that as if it's a sickness." "It might be," Jon said. "A lifelong one." Robb laughed, but there was little humor in it. "At least I've got someone to share the fever with." Ghost pressed against their legs, tail swishing. Jon scratched his neck absently, eyes still on the empty road. "We should see to the patrols," he said, "and the stores, and that boundary dispute in the village." "Aye." Robb rolled his shoulders, as if adjusting to a new weight. "Maester Luwin will have a list as long as my arm. And we'll go through it," Jon replied. "One line at a time." Robb glanced at him then, a quick sideways look. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" Jon asked. "For staying." Robb's mouth twisted. "For not leaving me to do this alone." Jon thought of the wall, of Benjen's black cloak vanishing into the cold. He thought of Catelyn's eyes on him, of Bran sleeping, of Arya's fierce grin. He thought of Ned's words in the solar, the quiet pride in them. "I'm where I should be," he said simply. Robb nodded as if that settled it. Perhaps for now it did. Behind them, The torches along the ramparts flickered to life as the light began to fade. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of snow and something else, something older and colder from the far north. Ghost's ears pricked. He lifted his head, sniffing the air, then gave a low, uneasy growl. Jon's hand stilled on his fur. He felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the wind. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. Ghost stared northward, beyond the walls, beyond the wolfswood, toward a line of hills that marked the edge of Jon's world. His eyes burned in the growing dark. Robb followed his gaze and frowned. "Wolves," he said. "They always look that way when the snow's coming." "Maybe," Jon said, "maybe something else." He could not shake the sense that, with the king's party gone and the gates closed behind them, something unseen had turned its face toward Winterfell. The north was vast, its dangers many. Without the wall between them and it, the south would never know what was coming until it was too late. But that was not his path. His was here on these stones at this brother's side. "For now," he said, more to himself than to Robb, "we have enough to mind within the walls." The room Maester Luwin had given over to their planning was smaller than the solar, narrower than the Great Hall, but it was already beginning to feel like the true heart of Winterfell. The walls were lined with shelves bearing scrolls and ledgers. A battered table dominated the center, its surface scarred by years of use. A small fire crackled in the hearth, fighting back the creeping chill. Robb sprawled in his chair with less grace than he brought to the yard, a ledger open before him. He had unfastened his cloak and pushed his sleeves up, the lamplight glinting off the hairs on his forearms. His eyes were reddened at the edges, his handwriting growing more cramped with each line. 10 barrels of oats from Lord Serwyn," he read aloud. 4 of barley, 2 carts of timber. Gods, I never knew there were so many numbers in ruling. "Numbers keep men fed," Maester Luwin said, dipping his quill. "Fed men fight better. Hungry men grumble. Grumbling men become unhappy vassals." "You will learn to love numbers, my lord," Robb groaned. "I'd rather learn to love fewer of them." Jon suppressed a smile. He stood on the other side of the table, a map of the north spread flat beneath his hands. Small carved stones marked the major holdfasts. A bear for Bear Island, a flayed man for the Dreadfort, a pair of pine cones for Deepwood Motte. He moved them almost absently, tracing routes in his head. "We need to think about the roads," he said. "Winter may come early. If we don't keep them clear, we'll lose more to cold and hunger than to any raiders." Robb glanced up. "Ser Rodrik says we've had no wildling trouble for years." "Ser Rodrik is thinking of swordsmen at the gate," Jon replied. "Not a starving family frozen in a drift because the snow was higher than their wagon." He tapped the map near a particularly narrow pass. "We know the winter roads, but some of the smaller farmers don't. If we send men ahead to keep the paths open, to mark the safe ways." "Men?" Robb echoed. "We have only so many to spare." "Not men-at-arms," Jon said. "Huntsmen, trackers, men who know the woods. Give them authority to order the village men to clear the snow. They'll grumble less if it comes from their own." Maester Luwin nodded, eyes gleaming with interest. "A sensible idea," he said. "We could draw up a rota. Lord Glover's men for the roads near the Wolfswood. Men from Torrens Square further west. The Umbers near Last Hearth." Robb sighed, but he reached for a fresh piece of parchment. "Very well," he said. "Tell me which roads you want watched, Jon. I'll command it." As they worked, the light outside the narrow window faded from iron gray to near black. Servants came and went with mulled ale and trencher bread. Ghost shifted in his sleep, growling softly at some dream only he could see. "This is what you wanted," Robb said at one point, sitting back and flexing his cramped fingers. "To matter, to have a place. Do you regret?" "No," Jon said, sharper than he intended. He softened it a little. "No, I don't." Robb studied him. "You think of it still," he observed. "The wall, the life you almost chose." Jon considered lying, but the room was too small, the firelight too honest. "Yes," he said. "I think of it. I'd be a fool not to wonder. But wondering isn't regret." "What then?" "Comparison," Jon said, searching for the right word, measuring one path against another, seeing that they both have weight. He traced a line on the map from Winterfell north to the wall. "Up there," he said, "I'd wear black. I'd have brothers of a sort. I'd fight wildlings and watch the forest and learn to read the sky. I'd never have to worry about grain or fences or petitioners. But I'd never sit at this table either. Never have a say in how these people live." He moved his finger back to Winterfell. The carved wolf that marked it sat solid and unmoving. "Here," he said, "I can't make men forget what I am, but I can make sure they don't freeze. I can help you keep them safe. That matters too." Robb's gaze followed his hand. "You always did think too much," he said, but there was no heat in it. "And you sometimes not enough," Jon retorted. Robb grinned. "Which is why we make a fine pair." Maester Luwin made a small noise that might have been amusement. "The old kings in the north had their warden brothers," he said. "One wore the crown, the other the sword. It seems Winterfell has found its own version again." Jon flushed, but he said nothing. The notion sat strangely in him, half flattering, half terrifying. Later, when Luwin had left to snatch a few hours' sleep and Robb had stumbled off to his bed, Jon lingered. He stood over the map, fingertips resting lightly on Winterfell's carved wolf, and let his eyes trace the distances between the stones. South lay King's Landing, the capital he might never see. North lay the Wall, the life he had almost chosen. Between them, the north spread wide. Forests and hills and lonely holds where men and women rose with the dawn to fight the cold and the earth and whatever else the world threw at them. He was bound to them now, in a way he had not been when he could still dream of leaving. The thought frightened him. It also steadied him. Ghost came to his side, pressing his head against Jon's hip. Jon scratched between his ears. "We'll do our duty," he said quietly, to the wolf, to the room, to himself. "Whatever comes." The flames in the hearth crackled in answer, sending a warm wash of light over the map. Outside, the wind rose, brushing against the stone like a distant hand. Sleep did not come easily that night. The bed in his new chamber felt too soft, the blankets too heavy. The air was warm, almost stuffy, compared to the drafty alcove he had grown used to. It was a small thing, a mark of his changed place in the household, but it sat oddly on his shoulders. After an hour of turning restlessly, Jon gave up. He pulled on his boots and cloak and slipped out into the corridor. Ghost padded out from under the bed without needing to be called, as if he had been waiting. The castle lay quiet, the torches along the walls burning low. The guards nodded as he passed. One or two straightened a little at the sight of him, their eyes flicking to the direwolf. He climbed to the ramparts. The cold bit at his face, a familiar sting. Above, the sky had cleared, the clouds blown away by some high wind. Stars spilled across the dark like frost over black stone, sharper and more numerous than he remembered seeing in weeks. From up here, Winterfell seemed smaller and larger all at once. The towers rose around him, solid and unshakable. The Godswood's dark mass hunched near the heart of the castle, the weirwood's pale branches faintly visible in the moonlight. Beyond the walls, the fields lay silent under a thin skin of snow. The wolfswood loomed, a darker shadow against the horizon. Jon rested his forearms on the cold stone and looked north. The wall lay far beyond the edge of his sight, but he felt its presence all the same, a line drawn in his mind. In another life, he thought, I'd be standing atop it now. Or soon, looking south instead of north, wondering who sat in this place in my stead. He closed his eyes and tried to imagine that Jon Snow. He saw a black cloak, a sword in hand, a face hardened by wind and watchfires. He saw brothers at his side, criminals and nobles and men who had run from things they could not bear. He felt the weight of the wall's ancient stones beneath his boots. Then he opened his eyes and saw what was actually before him. Winterfell, his father's hall, his brother's future, his own. Duty, Ned had said, comes in many guises. Ghost pressed closer, his fur a warm wall against Jon's leg. He sniffed the air, then lifted his head and howled. The sound rose pure and wild, slicing through the night. From the distant woods came answering cries, softer but unmistakable. Wolves still ran there, unseen and untamed. Jon's chest tightened. The sound spoke to something deep in him, something old and wordless. For a moment, he felt the boundaries between himself and the wolf blur. The cold underfoot, the scent of snow and sap and distant prey, the pull of the dark trees. Then it passed, leaving him shivering, but not from the cold. "We are where we belong," he said aloud, as if reminding himself as much as Ghost. For now, the wind tugged at his cloak. Far off, beyond the woods and the hills and the wall, beyond even the maps Maester Luwin kept, things moved in the dark. Jon could not see them, could not name them, but some instinct whispered of restlessness there, of eyes turning south. He could not stop that, no more than he could stop the coming of winter. But he could stand here on these walls, with this wolf at his side, and be ready when whatever came reached his doors. He turned from the parapet at last and made his way back toward the stairs. Behind him, the stars burned cold and distant. Ahead, the keep's windows glowed with firelight, small islands of warmth in the night. Between them walked Jon Snow, no longer a boy dreaming of escape, but a young man who had chosen, and would have to live with that choice. Ghost trotted at his heel, silent and sure. Together, they went back into Winterfell. The first breath Bran took with his eyes open sounded no different from any other. It was only the way Catelyn's fingers tightened on his hand, the tiny hitch in her own breathing, that made Jon look up sharply from the doorway. He had come expecting the same sight he'd seen every day since the fall. Bran still as carved wood, the slow rise and fall of his chest the only sign that life lingered. Instead, he found Catelyn rigid in her chair, Maester Luwin bent forward, and Bran's lashes trembling. "Bran!" Robb's voice cracked on the name. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Jon, both of them held on the threshold by something like fear. Bran's lids fluttered again. This time they rose, exposing eyes clouded with sleep and confusion. He stared at the ceiling for a moment, unseeing, then turned his head with obvious effort. "Mother!" he croaked. Catelyn made a sound Jon had never heard from her before, a raw, broken thing. She leaned over him, her hair falling like a curtain. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm here, my sweet boy." Bran's gaze shifted past her, slow and dragging, as if each inch took more strength than any climb he'd ever made. It landed on Robb first. His brow wrinkled. "Robb," he said, a little stronger. Robb lurched into the room, drawn as if by a rope. He dropped to one knee by the bed, his hand hovering over Bran's chest and then settling lightly on the blanket. "7 hells, you scared us," he said, his laugh shaky. "You sleep lazier than summer." Bran's mouth twitched. "Summer? Asleep in the yard," Robb said. "He's been howling at the moon for you. I swear it." Bran's eyes moved again, searching. They came to rest on Jon. For a heartbeat, Jon thought the boy might look away, that his own presence in this room, at this bed, would be rejected as it so often had been by Bran's mother. Instead, Bran's face softened with something like relief. "Jon," he whispered. Jon swallowed. His feet felt rooted to the stone. It was only when Ghost nudged his thigh from behind, a subtle pressure, that he found the will to move. He stepped to the other side of the bed, opposite Robb, the candles painting all their faces with a warm, unsteady light. "I'm here," Jon said. The words came rough. "Took you long enough to wake." Bran managed a faint, crooked smile. "I fell." "Yes," Catelyn said quickly, her fingers fluttering. "You fell, but you're safe now. You're home." Bran's gaze slid past her, unfocused for a moment. "I was climbing," he murmured. "The broken tower. I remember the wind." And his eyes narrowed. A crease formed between his brows. "There was someone," he said slowly. Two people, a man and a woman. Golden, his voice thinned. Catelyn went very still. Maester Luwin shifted, the leather of his satchel creaking. Bran, Luwin said gently, your mind has been in shadow for a long time. Dreams can cling even after waking. Do not force yourself. Bran blinked, his face crumpling with effort. Golden hair, he whispered stubbornly. They were angry. Then I was falling. Catelyn's hand tightened so hard on his that her knuckles whitened. It's enough, she said sharply. He's exhausted. Let him rest. Her gaze flicked to Jon, quick and almost pleading, as if she feared he would press the boy for more. Jon raised both hands slightly and stepped back. I won't trouble him, he said. We only came to see if he lived, Robb added, his eyes never leaving Bran's face. He does. That's enough for tonight. Luwin nodded. Lady Stark is right, he said. He must have rest. Calm, familiar voices. No questions he cannot yet answer. His eyes met Jon's. There was understanding in them and warning. Memories can be tricky things, especially when they brush against truth men would rather not see. Jon thought of the Lannisters' golden hair, of the way Jaime had smirked across the yard, lazy and amused, as if Winterfell were a toy he'd grown bored of. He thought of the chance of a boy climbing high, too high, and seeing something he should not have seen. He also thought of letters from King's Landing that had not yet come, of the silence between one raven and the next. We'll come back tomorrow, Jon said. When he's stronger. Robb hesitated. I'll stay a little longer, he said. If that's all right, Mother. Catelyn's shoulders sagged. Of course. Her eyes flicked to Jon again, softer now, though it might have been a trick of the candlelight. Thank you, she said grudgingly, for your prayers. Jon had not spoken any aloud, but he had stood in the gods wood more nights than he could count, watching the heart tree's face weep red into the pool as he whispered Bran's name. He inclined his head. We're glad he's back, he said simply. Ghost stepped aside as Jon left the room, his paws making no sound on the rushes. In the corridor, Jon leaned against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. The weight that had pressed on Winterfell seemed a little lighter now, the hallways a shade less haunted. But Bran's words lingered. Golden hair. The raven came 3 weeks after Bran woke. By then, the boy could sit propped against pillows, speak without his voice breaking on every other word, and watch with a fierce, caged restlessness as the others moved around him. His legs, when uncovered, lay thin and motionless beneath the blankets. Robb's jaw clenched every time he saw them. Jon saw the way Catelyn's eyes flinched, as if the sight were a fresh wound each time. The raven landed on the rookery ledge with a sharp clatter of wings. The rookery keeper, a stooped man with ink-stained hands, brought the scroll down to Maester Luwin without delay. The seal bore the crowned stag of House Baratheon pressed alongside the Lion of Lannister, red wax hard and gleaming. Luwin sent for Robb and Jon at once. The Maester's study was cluttered, as always, with rolled parchments and jars of ingredients, the air thick with the smell of dried herbs and old paper. Luwin stood by the table when they arrived, the scroll in his hands, his expression already telling them this was no simple matter of accounts. It's from King's Landing, he said unnecessarily. Robb's shoulders squared. From father? He asked. The seal, Luwin began, then sighed. Let us see. He broke the wax and unfurled the parchment, his lips moving as he read. Jon watched the color drain slowly from the Maester's face, a tide receding. What is it? Robb demanded. Maester. Luwin looked up. For the first time since Jon had known him, the old man seemed uncertain of where to begin. The king is dead, he said. The words fell into the small room like stones into still water, sending invisible ripples through the air. For a moment Jon thought he must have misheard. The king, so loud, so larger than life, seemed the last man in the world who could simply stop. Dead, Robb repeated. How? A boar, Luwin said, on a hunt in the Kingswood. The letter says it gored him. He lingered some days, then passed. Jon remembered the feast, Robert's booming laugh, the way he'd clapped Ned on the back hard enough to stagger him. It was difficult to reconcile that memory with a man bleeding out in some southern forest, torn by tusks, whispering last truths into the air. Who wrote? Jon asked, forcing his mind to the practical. Luwin glanced down again. It bears the hand of Grand Maester Pycelle, he said. But the words? He shook his head. The letter speaks of a smooth transition, of Prince Joffrey assuming the throne, of the need for the North to affirm its loyalty. Robb's hands tightened on the table until the knuckles showed white. And my father? He asked. What does it say of him? Luwin's eyes clouded. That Lord Eddard Stark has been charged with treason, he said. That he plotted to deny Joffrey his rightful crown. That he confessed under the eyes of the gods and has been taken into custody to await the king's justice. For a moment the room tilted. Jon heard his own breath rasping loud in his ears. That's a lie, Robb said. His voice came out hoarse, low. Father would never plot treason. He's the only honest man in that sty of a court. Yes, Luwin said simply, which may be why he has been placed in the very position where honor is most dangerous. He folded the parchment with careful hands, as if that would change what it contained. There is more. Lord Tywin Lannister calls for all loyal men to stand with the crown against Northern Rebellion. Robb laughed once, a brittle sound. They accuse us of rebellion before we've even had time to draw a sword. The letter expects you to bend the knee, Luwin said, to denounce your father's so-called treason and affirm your loyalty to the boy they name king. Jon could almost feel the moment something in Robb hardened and said. The boy who had groaned over ledgers and fretted over fences receded. In his place, another Robb began to emerge, all sharp lines and iron. I will not denounce my father, Robb said. Not to save my own skin, not for 100 kings. Careful, Luwin cautioned. Words spoken in anger carry weight, especially now. Ravens have wings. You think they'll need wings to hear? Robb demanded. They called my father a traitor, Maester. They drag his name through the mud and expect me to swallow it like milk. Jon understood that anger. It burned in his own chest. He thought of Ned's quiet strength, of the way he had listened to small folk quarrels with the same care he'd given a king's complaints. To imagine him bent on a scaffold, confessing to a crime he would never commit, made Jon's teeth ache with the urge to bite and tear. What do we do? Jon asked. Luwin's gaze moved between them. The Lord and the bastard, both with the same stubborn set to their jaws. We must be wise, he said. Rash action could doom Lord Eddard and the girls. The Lannisters hold King's Landing. They hold the Iron Throne. They hold your sisters, Robb. They will not hesitate to use them. Robb flinched as if struck. Sansa, he whispered. Arya. Jon felt his own stomach drop at the thought of Arya in those gilded cages, spitting and clawing like a trapped cat. Sansa, too, for all her sighs about princes and songs, would be alone in a court that valued courtesy over truth. We could call the banners, Robb said. Ride south. Make them answer for this. And if they put your father's head on a spike the moment they hear the North marches? Luwin asked. If they send your sisters back in pieces? The Lannisters did not rise so high by being gentle. Silence fell heavy and ugly. Jon heard the crackle of the hearth, the scratch of the raven on the sill above, hopping and croaking as if impatient. Then we do nothing? Robb's voice was raw. Sit and wait while they keep him in some dark cell and call him traitor in the streets? Not nothing, Luwin said. We send messages, quiet ones, to houses who may stand with us when the time comes, to those who have reason to mistrust the lawn. Nisters, we gather news. We strengthen our own position. He looked at Jon. We prepare. Jon met his gaze. There it was again, the path that did not involve an immediate drawing of swords, but something slower, more deliberate. It was not as satisfying as the thought of storming the capital and cutting down every lion in its streets. It was more likely to save lives. "How long do we have?" Jon asked. "Until the Lannisters tire of holding a Stark as hostage," Luwin said. "Or until their boy king decides that a public example would make his crown sit straighter." His lips thinned. "The sooner we are ready, the better." Robb's eyes burned. "Then let us be ready," he said. "Send your ravens, Maester. I'll see to the men." He turned on his heel and strode from the room. Ghost rose to follow. Jon hesitated. "Maester," he said, "you said houses with reason to mistrust the Lannisters. Who did you have in mind?" Luwin smiled without humor. "We shall see," he said. "The Riverlands are not likely to forget whose bannermen Lord Tywin's men have been raiding of late. Nor will the Arryns be eager to forget that Jon Arryn died under Lannister eyes. There is also Stannis Baratheon, who vanishes from King's Landing when his brother dies, leaving Cersei to crow over the throne. He is not a man given to silence when he thinks a wrong has been done." Jon nodded slowly. "Names and sigils, distances and grudges. Another map to learn." "Go with Robb," Luwin said. "He will need you, and whatever comes, remember that foolish courage can kill as surely as cowardice." Jon left the tower with the parchment's weight pressing on his mind. The king dead, their father accused. The game in the south had turned bloody. Here in the north, the board remained still for the moment. The wind knifed across the courtyard as he stepped out. Ghost bared his teeth at it, as if smelling something more than cold. "War," Jon said to the wolf. "It's coming, whether we want it or not." Steel rang in the yard, a harsh, relentless music. The sound heartened Jon in a way nothing else quite could. Men learning to use their swords meant men less likely to die when they first faced an enemy who actually meant to kill them. "Again," Robb called. "Shields high. Bryn, if you let that spear slip under your guard one more time, I'll send you to the kitchens to peel turnips for the rest of winter." Bryn, a barrel-chested man from a village near Torrens Square, grunted and raised his shield higher. The young spearman opposite him smirked, then lunged. The spear tip glanced off the rim of the shield instead of finding the gap beneath. "Better," Jon said, stepping in to tap Bryn's boot with the flat of his own sword. "But your footing is wrong. You're braced to shove, not to pivot. Try again." Bryn muttered something unintelligible but shifted his stance. Ser Roderick watched from near the armory, his whiskers bristling. When Jon had suggested mixing the village men with Winterfell's own guards for drills, he'd pursed his lips, skeptical. "Peasants with spears are not knights with lances," he'd said. "No," Jon had replied, "but enough peasants with spears can stop a horse charge if they don't break." They had argued, politely but firmly, until Roderick relented. Now, watching the old knight's eyes, Jon saw reluctant approval. "Not hopeless," Roderick called out gruffly, as two lines of men advanced toward each other with spears level and shields locked. "Which is more than I'd have said a week ago." "High praise," Jon answered, stepping out of the way as the lines met with a thudding crash. "Though I think Bryn might prefer something warmer." "Bryn can earn warmth with discipline," Roderick said. "The Lannisters won't care if his hands are cold when they stick a sword through him." The drills went on through the afternoon. Men staggered, swore, got back up. Robb moved through them like a young general, his voice hoarse from shouting, cloak flapping behind him. Jon found himself unconsciously mirroring Ned's manner. Watching, correcting quietly, praising when warranted, never raising his voice more than he had to. Anger made men clumsy. Calm could sharpen. Between bouts, they spoke of letters. Lord Karstark had replied to Luwin's raven with a terse acknowledgement and a promise of swords if called. Lord Glover's reply had been warmer, speaking of old loyalties and the need to stand firm. From the south, rumors drifted on the slow wings of gossip. Tywin Lannister was mustering men at Casterly Rock. The Riverlands burned. "We'll have to call them soon," Robb said to Jon as the men fell back to drink water and wipe sweat from their brows. "The banners." We can't wait forever for father to free himself. The Lannisters aren't waiting. Jon wiped his own forehead with the back of his wrist. His arm ached pleasantly from hours of work. If we march too soon, without allies, we could be crushed between Lannisters and Crown, he said. If we wait too long, they might make an example of father to show the realm what happens to those who stand against them. There's no safe answer. Robb's jaw set. The safe answer is to do nothing. To bow and scrape and pretend to believe their lies. You know we can't, Jon said. Robb nodded once. Sharp. He turned to where Ser Rodrik stood. How many men can we count on within a fortnight? He asked. Rodrik stroked his mustache. From Winterfell's own levy? Perhaps 200 men-at-arms and another 300 from the villages, if we push, he said. More if we strip the fields of every man who can lift a spear. But harvest approaches. Take too many, and the stores suffer. We'll need more than that, Jon said quietly. Karstark, Glover, Manderley, the Umbers, if we can keep them from stabbing each other on the road. Robb's mouth quirked at that, briefly. Father always said the great Jon was truest when he was angriest, he said. At least his enemies never mistake him. He'll come, Jon said. The Lannisters are Southrons. He won't stomach them calling a Stark traitor. None of us will, Robb replied. They fell back into drilling, working until the men's forms blurred and the light began to fail. When at last Ser Rodrik called a halt, the yard was a churned mess of mud and trampled straw. Men staggered away toward the barracks and the kitchens, some laughing, some cursing, most too tired to do more than drag their feet. Robb sagged onto a bench by the wall, chest heaving. Jon sat beside him, stretching his aching legs. Ghost loped over, tongue lolling, and collapsed at their feet, as if he too had been training. I thought ruling would be all listening and deciding, Robb said, once he had breath. I didn't realize how much of it would be sorting beans from grain and making sure Bryn doesn't get himself killed with his shield on the wrong side. Beans and Bryn both need sorting, Jon said. Else you starve in winter or lose your flank in battle. Robb snorted. You're starting to sound like father. Better than sounding like Theon, Jon replied. As if summoned by his name, Theon ambled into the yard. A bough slung over his shoulder, a smirk in place. Hard at work, I see, he drawled. Playing at little lordlings while the real game's in the south. Robb's eyes narrowed. The game in the south is about to spill north, he said. You'll have your share of it soon enough. Theon's grin sharpened. I'd hope so, he said. It would be a shame to sharpen all these arrows and never loose them at a lion. Jon watched him, wondering, as he had more and more lately, where Theon's loyalties truly sat. The Greyjoy's jokes had grown edgier as talk of war thickened. He laughed at the right times, stood at Robb's shoulder in the hall, but there was always something distant in his gaze when the talk turned to the sea. We must keep an eye on him, Jon thought. Another piece on the board. One that might slide sideways when least expected. The wind shifted, carrying with it the scent of snow and something sharper. Ghost lifted his head, nose twitching. Jon scratched behind his ears. Soon, he murmured. Soon enough we'll have more than drills. They went to the Godswood without speaking of it, the way boys went to the practice yard without needing to announce their intent. The need pulled them both, and so they followed it beneath the ancient boughs. The Godswood of Winterfell was older than any castle stone, older than any name carved in the crypts. The air beneath the trees was cooler, sharper, with a hint of damp earth and leaf mold. Birds muttered in the branches, their calls muted as if out of respect. The pool lay still, black as a raven's eye, reflecting the pale, bloody face of the heart tree that watched over it all. Jon had always felt both comforted and unsettled here. The old gods did not speak in words, but in the creak of branches, the drip of water, the weight of gazes that seemed to fall from no particular place. He had prayed here often, for Bran, for some sign that he was not entirely alone in this world. The tree had never answered, save with silence. Today the silence felt thicker, expectant. Robb stopped a few paces from the water's edge. Gray Wind trotted ahead, sniffing at the roots of the heart tree, then sat back on his haunches, ears cocked. Ghost came to stand at Jon's side, their pale forms mirror and counterpoint. Robb drew his sword. The rasp sounded loud in the stillness. Jon hesitated only a moment before unsheathing Longclaw. The Valyrian steel drank the light, its rippled surface dark and strange. "We shouldn't be doing this without Father," Robb said quietly. "He's here," Jon replied. "In this place more than any other." Robb nodded once. He knelt, point of his sword resting in the soft earth, hands clasped on the pommel. Jon mirrored him. The damp seeped through the knees of his trousers, grounding him. "I don't know how to pray for war," Robb admitted. His voice sounded small under the trees. "I only know how to ask for it not to come." "Then ask for the strength to survive it," Jon said, "and the wisdom not to start what we can't finish." He closed his eyes. The sense of the gods would seem to swell around him. Sap and soil and the faint iron tang of the weirwood sap, like old blood. The carved eyes of the heart tree watched from behind his lids. "Old gods," he thought, "I don't know if you hear bastards. I don't know if you hear anyone, or if we only talk to the wind. But if you do listen, listen now." He thought of Ned in some dark cell in King's Landing, honor used against him like a rope. He thought of Sansa and Arya walking through halls lined with Lannister guards, their every step watched. He thought of the small folk in the north, who would pay first and hardest for any war that came. Help us keep them safe, he thought. Give us sense enough not to rush where we shouldn't, and courage enough to stand where we must. Beside him, Robb's voice rose, barely above a whisper. "I'm no king," he said. "Not yet. I don't know how to be. But they're all looking at me as if I already wear a crown. If I falter, they falter. If I fall," he swallowed, "don't let me fall. Not before I've done what I must." The breeze stirred, setting the weirwood's leaves to a slow rustling. To Jon, it sounded almost like a sigh. He opened his eyes. The heart tree's carved face regarded them with its eternal, unreadable frown. Red sap glistened along the grooves of its cheeks. "Do you think they hear?" Robb asked. "I think," Jon said slowly, "that we hear ourselves louder in a place like this. That's something." Robb huffed a short, humorless laugh. "Trust you to make prayer sound like self-examination," he said. Jon sheathed Longclaw. "It's all we can be certain of," he said. "Our own choices." Gray Wind rose and shook himself, sending droplets from the edge of the pool flying. Ghost watched him, then padded closer to the tree, sniffing at its roots. For a moment, his red eyes met the carved ones above. Jon felt a chill dance up his spine. "Come," he said. "If we stay much longer, Luwin will think we've vanished into the bark." They left the Godswood as they had entered it, side by side. Behind them, the leaves whispered, and the heart tree bled its slow, crimson tears into the pool. The storm had blown in from the shivering sea, bringing with it sleet and a wind that clawed at the shutters. The hall was warm despite it, the hearths banked high, but the outside world made itself known in every rattle of wood and lash of rain. It felt fitting, Jon thought, that the weather should mirror the unrest in the realm. The great Jon had arrived 2 days before, bringing with him a roar of laughter and a retinue of men who ate like wolves and drank like they meant to outlast the storm. He prowled the hall now, restless, his massive hands flexing. He did not enjoy waiting. Few war-hungry men did. "We should have marched yesterday," he grumbled, slamming his cup down so hard that ale sloshed over his fingers. "Every hour we sit here is an hour the lions dig their claws deeper into your father." Robb sat rigid in the high seat, the carved direwolf looming above him. He wore no crown, but the hall already treated him as if he did. Men's eyes sought his whenever someone spoke of war or oaths. His jaw had developed a slight constant clench. "We wait for Lord Karstark," Robb said, "and for word from the Manderleys. Marching half-prepared is worse than sitting." "Tell that to Tywin," the great Jon scoffed. "He's not sitting." His men sack and burn the Riverlands as we speak. And we are not the Riverlands, Jon said quietly. The great Jon swung his gaze to him, amused and faintly contemptuous. The bastard speaks, he boomed. Go on, Snow. Give us the wisdom of the yard. Jon met his eyes without flinching. If we march now, with only the men in this hall, we invite defeat, he said. We know Tywin has a host. We don't yet know its size or its plans. We ride blind. The first lesson in the yard is not to charge with your eyes closed. The great Jon's mustaches twitched. For a moment Jon thought he might take offense. Then the big man barked a laugh. Ned's whelp through and through, he said. Thinks before he swings. I've always found that dangerous in a Stark. Dangerous to their enemies, Robb said. The doors banged open then, letting in a gust of cold air and a flurry of sleet. The Raven Keeper stumbled in, clutching a scroll. His cheeks were reddened from the wind. My lord, he said, bowing awkwardly. A raven from the south, from the twins. The Freys, Robb murmured. Maester Luwin stepped forward to take the scroll. The wolfhead seal was plain on the wax, but the parchment itself bore another, smaller mark, a pair of towers. Lord Walder answers at last, Luwin said. It seems word of trouble travels even to the Trident. He broke the seal and read quickly, lips pursed. The hall hushed, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the rain's angry drumming. Well? The great Jon demanded. He offers passage, Luwin said. If we ride south, he will open his gates and lower his bridge. In return, he demands certain considerations. Robb's eyes narrowed. Of course he does, he said. What does the old spider want? Gold? Grain? My firstborn child. Not quite so dramatic, Luwin replied, though his smile was tight. He asks that his grandsons be fostered here at Winterfell, that his son Olivar serve as your squire if you ride to war, and that one of his granddaughters be betrothed to a Stark. He looked between Robb and Jon. Not him, the great Jon said immediately, jerking his chin at Jon. Begging your pardon, Snow, but the Freys will want their girl tied to the main line, not the snowdrift at its edge. Jon felt the words like a familiar bruise. Before he could respond, Luwin shook his head. Lord Walder names no name, he said. Only that a Stark of Winterfell pledge marriage to a Frey made once the war is done. Robb's mouth tightened. So he wants to bind us as tightly as he can before he risks his bridge, he said. Typical. Jon glanced at him. We need the twins, he said quietly. There's no better way across the Green Fork with an army. Without that bridge, we'd have to split our host or march far out of our way. Robb knew it. He had paced over the maps with Jon and Luwin enough times to trace the road south in his sleep. The twins were a choke point as vital as any fortress. I will not sell myself like a horse, Robb said. Not when I don't even know who I'm buying. You might not have to, Jon said. He felt the weight of another decision settle on his shoulders. There are two of us. Robb's eyes snapped to him. No, he said immediately. Why not? The great Jon challenged. The boy's right. A Stark's a Stark. The old weasel gets his tie to Winterfell without taking a bite out of the air. Seems neat enough to me. I won't barter your life, Robb told Jon. Or your future. You'll be bartering our chance to reach father if you don't, Jon said quietly. I'm not blind, Robb. I know what my place is. Bastard or no, the Freys will see a match with a son raised in Winterfell as more than they'd have had otherwise. Let Lord Walder boast that his granddaughter will bear wolf-blooded children. It costs me less than it would cost you. Robb's jaw worked. It would cost you choice, he said. To be tied to some girl you've never met, to a house you don't respect. I don't respect their lord, Jon said. But that doesn't mean his granddaughter will be a monster. And choice. He let out a breath. Choice has never been something I counted on. Not truly. Luwin watched them, eyes patient. The great Jon took a long swallow of ale, clearly enjoying the spectacle of Starks wrestling with duty. If you do this, Robb said, it will be because you choose it. Not because I order it. Jon almost smiled. If you ordered it, I might refuse just to be contrary, he said. This way you can owe me. Robb huffed. It was a raw sound, but there was a glimmer of humor in it. I already owe you more than I can name, he said. He looked to Luwin. Tell Lord Walder we accept his terms, he said. He shall have his fosterlings, his squire, and his betrot. Hell, to Jon Snow of Winterfell, the great Jon raised his cup. To the bastard who sells himself to a Frey so the rest of us can cross a bridge, he bellowed. May the girl have all her teeth and not too many warts. Laughter rippled through the hall, harsh but not unkind. Jon let it wash over him. He thought of another life, another choice. In this one, he would not be a black-cloaked brother with no wife and no children. He would be tied, however reluctantly, to a southern crossing and a house of fickle loyalties. He could bear it if it meant steel under his feet instead of water when they marched south. Ghost pressed against his leg under the table. Jon rested his hand on the wolf's head, drawing strength from the simple heat of him. Another path, he murmured. Another price. Bran's room had changed since he'd woken. The cloying smell of sickness had lessened, chased back by fresh rushes and open shutters. A small wooden horse carved by some Winterfell craftsman sat on his bedside table, its legs uneven. Robb had brought it, embarrassed, claiming he'd hacked it out himself. Bran had laughed, the sound too big for his thin chest. Now he sat propped against the headboard, a wolfskin thrown over his lap. His legs lay stiff and unresponsive beneath it, pale feet peeking from the fur's edge. He stared at them as if he could will them to move. They feel like someone else's, he said quietly. Like I woke up and the gods put the wrong legs on me. Jon sat on a stool beside the bed, watching his face. Summer lay sprawled on the rug, tongue lolling. The dire wolf lifted his head now and then as if to check that Bran still breathed, then settled again. They're still yours, Jon said. Stubborn as any Stark. They're just sleeping longer than the rest of you. Bran snorted. If they sleep any longer, they'll grow roots. Robb stood by the window, staring out at the yard below. His reflection hovered in the glass, doubled and ghostly. His arms were folded tight across his chest. You'll ride again, Robb said, even if it's on a horse instead of climbing walls like some mad squirrel. I remember falling, Bran said abruptly, as if he hadn't heard him. I remember the wind, the stone. I remember. His brow furrowed. He squinted, as if trying to bring a distant object into focus. Golden hair, he said. A man and a woman. I told Mother. She says it was a dream, but it wasn't. I was on the tower. I heard them talking. They were angry. Then he broke off, breath-catching. Jon felt his skin prickle. He glanced at Robb. His brother's face had gone very still. Bran, Jon said softly. You don't have to. I was climbing, Bran insisted. I wanted to see over the wall. I always liked that tower because no one uses it. I climbed higher than before. There was a window. I heard voices. He swallowed. His eyes were fixed now somewhere beyond them, seeing a past moment. They were talking about the queen, he said. About her children. About how they... His voice thinned. I don't remember the words, only that it was wrong, that they were afraid someone would hear. Then the man saw me. He smiled, a little, not happy, like a cat smiles at a bird. And he said, the things I do for love. Bran's fingers clenched in the fur. Then he pushed me. Silence fell like a dropped stone. Jon's heart hammered. He had suspected. How could he not? After hearing of Catelyn's blade in her hand and the cutthroat in the night? After seeing the way she flinched at any mention of the Lannisters? But hearing the words from Bran's own mouth made it real. Robb's hand slammed against the window frame. The glass rattled. Jaime Lannister, he said, each syllable hard as iron. The Kingslayer. Bran's eyes focused on him. I didn't remember at first, he said. It was all dreams and falling. But now, when I sleep, I see his face. I hear his words. I thought if I told, maybe. He looked at his legs. The blanket shifted as he tugged it higher. Mother says it was a dream, he finished. She says it doesn't matter now, that the queen is far away and there's war coming and I should rest. Jon could imagine Catelyn's fear. Accusing the queen's brother of attempted murder was more than a simple charge. It was treason of its own kind, a match thrown into a hall soaked in oil. Yet how could they know this and stay silent? It matters, Jon said quietly. It may matter more than anything. Robb turned from the window. His eyes were bright with anger and something like grief. They tried to kill you, he said to Bran, to keep their secrets safe. And father, he's in their claws because he must have found the same thing you did. That Queen Cersei's children. He trailed off. The implication hung between them. Are not the king's, Jon said. If they're Jaime's, Joffrey's no true heir. Bran frowned. I don't care whose he is, he said. He's a monster if he lets men like that push boys from towers. Jon couldn't argue with that. Does Mother know you remember all this? He asked. Bran hesitated. She knows some, he said. I tried to tell her. She hushed me, said it would bring danger down on us if I spoke too loud. Said father would fix it, that we had to trust him. Robb's hand tightened on the window frame. Father's in a dungeon for daring to name the truth, he said. Trust won't open those doors. Jon leaned forward. We can't shout this to every man in the hall, he said. Not yet, but we can use it. We know now for certain what we fight. Not just men who called our father traitor, but men who tried to kill our brother to hide their own treason. Robb looked at him, eyes burning. I didn't need another reason to hate them, he said. But it seems the gods are generous in that regard. He pushed away from the window. Rest, Bran, he said. We'll speak of this again. Quietly. Bran nodded, exhaustion pulling at his features. Summer lifted his head and nudged Bran's arm, then settled when the boy's fingers found his fur. In the corridor outside, Robb rounded on Jon. This changes everything, he said. It changes nothing and everything, Jon replied. We were already set on a collision with the Lannisters. Now we know there's rot at the root of their crown. Robb dragged a hand through his hair. If we shout that Joffrey's no true king, half the realm will call it a northern lie, he said. But if we can reach someone with power, Stannis perhaps. Or Renly, Jon suggested. He has charm enough to gather swords. Robb snorted. Charm won't keep a man on a throne, he said. Stannis will fight because the law is on his side. Renly will laugh and throw feasts until someone removes his head. Jon thought of both brothers, from the tales he'd heard. Stannis hard as old oak, Renly smiling as a summer sky. In a just world, either might have been better than a boy born of deceit and violence. In any case, Jon said, this is proof. If father lives to speak, he can use it. If he doesn't, he couldn't finish. The words stuck. Then we'll use it, Robb said, as battle cry and justification both. The North does not bleed for a false king who pushes children from towers. His voice was a blade, honed on anger and love both. The morning they called the banners for war, Winterfell felt like the heart of some vast, waking beast. The yard churned with movement. Men tightening straps on saddles, smiths hammering last-minute rivets into armor, boys running with buckets and bundles. Horses snorted and stamped, sensing their riders' excitement and fear. Jon stood on the steps below the great hall, cloak wrapped tight against the chill. Ghost pressed against his leg, red eyes scanning the crowd. The direwolf's hackles were not raised. This was not danger, not yet. Only turmoil. Robb stepped up to the top of the steps. The murmur of the yard dulled as men noticed, then stilled. One by one, heads turned, voices quieted, until only the restless stamping of hooves and the creak of harnesses remained. My lords, Robb said, his voice clear in the cold air. My friends, my men. He wore leather and mail, a sword at his hip. A simple circlet of bronze, more a token than a crown, rested in his auburn hair, the old circlet of the kings in the north, brought out from a chest at Catelyn's insistence, not to name him king but to remind men of the blood he carried. "We ride south," Robb said, "not for glory, not for plunder. We ride because our liege lord, my father Eddard Stark, has been called traitor by those who should honor him. We ride because they hold him and my sisters in chains. We ride because the riverlands burn under Lannister torches, and because those who did this think the north will cower in its snow and do nothing." A growl of anger rippled through the gathered men. The great Jon threw back his head and laughed, a sound like a war horn. "They think wrong," he boomed. Robb lifted a hand. Silence fell again. "I won't ask you to follow me blindly," he said. "You deserve to know why we risk your lives, why we ask you to leave your homes and your families." He paused, drawing breath. "The boy they name king in the south sits a throne built on lies," Robb said. "He is no true son of Robert Baratheon. Those who put him there pushed my brother from a tower window to keep their secret. My father found the truth and tried to do what was right. For that, they chained him." A low, ugly sound rose from the crowd. Men shifted, hands clenched on spear shafts. Jon watched faces. Some showed confusion. This part of the tale had not been widely shared. But the northern lords closer to the steps, Karstark, Glover, Umber, Bolton, had been told in private. Jon saw their eyes hard and measuring. "The Lannisters think we will bow to their false king and kiss the hand that tried to murder our own," Robb went on. "They think the north is a province, a collection of cold stones and colder men. They think they can cut down a Stark and face no consequence." He straightened. "Today, we ride to show them what it means when the north remembers." The cheer that erupted then was like nothing Jon had ever heard. A raw, roaring wave of sound. Men shouted, clashed spear against shield, raised swords aloft. The names they cried were not the kings or any kings. They cried Stark, and Winterfell, and the North. Jon felt the sound vibrate in his bones. Beside him, the great Jon thumped his fist against his chest. "There's a wolf in him after all," he crowed. "I'll follow that howl." Roose Bolton inclined his head, his pale eyes glittering. "As will we all," he said. "For now." The "for now" was soft. Almost lost in the din, Jon heard it anyway. He filed it away, another shadow on the map of northern loyalties. Robb turned slightly. For a heartbeat, his gaze met Jon's. In his eyes, beyond the fiery resolve he showed the men, Jon saw the boy he'd grown up with, unsure, afraid, but standing anyway. Jon stepped forward, one pace below Robb, long claw at his hip. He raised his voice. "You've trained for this," he called to the men. "Not for songs or for glory, but for the man at your side. Remember your shield. Remember your oaths. Remember that you ride with brothers, not strangers. When the time comes, stand. That's all any man can do." Some of the men looked at him, at the bastard of Winterfell who now spoke with the Lord's cadence. Jon saw respect in more than a few faces. In others, wary calculation. He would take both. When the shouting died down, Maester Luwin stepped forward with a small scroll. "Lord Robb," he said quietly, "Lady Catelyn asks to see you before you depart." Robb nodded. "Have Grey Wind saddled," he told a waiting stable hand. "We ride within the hour." The host began to move. Banners lifted, ranks forming. Jon watched as lines of men fell in behind their lord's colors, a tapestry of northern sigils. Somewhere within it, his own future twisted and wove. "Time to be what they think we already are," he murmured to Ghost. The direwolf's ears flicked. His tongue lolled in a silent pant that looked almost like a grin. Catelyn Stark's chambers overlooked the inner yard. From her narrow window, she could see the swirl of activity below. Men mounting, banners unfurling, horses tossing their heads. The sight seemed to both draw and repel her. When Robb and Jon entered, she stood by that window, the parchment in her hand crumpled at the edges. Her hair was braided simply, her gown unadorned. Grief and lack of sleep had scoured her face thinner, but the steel in her eyes had not dulled. You called for us, Robb said. She turned, gaze flicking from her son to Jon. For once, there was no extra chill in it when it rested on the bastard. Perhaps Jon thought war had a way of stripping old resentments down to bare essentials. A raven came last night, she said. From the Eyrie. Robb's shoulders tightened. From Aunt Lisa? Yes. Catelyn's lips pressed into a thin line. She warns that the Lannisters mean to bleed the Riverlands dry. She also warns me to keep the North out of it, to shut our gates and let the South devour itself. She would, Robb muttered. She's always had a talent for seeing danger and then cowering behind the Vale's mountains. Catelyn's fingers tightened on the parchment. She is afraid, she said. She loved your father's foster brother. She believes the Lannisters murdered Jon Arryn. Fear makes her see enemies in every direction, even in us. She sighed. But there is more. She confirms what Maester Luwin and I had suspected. Your father sent her a letter before he was taken, one that spoke of his doubts about the king's children. She has hidden it, locked it away. She will not use it. She fears that to name the boy a bastard is to invite doom upon her own son. Jon felt a flash of frustration, mingled with understanding. People clung to their own blood above all. Still, to have the evidence and refuse to wield it. So we ride without their proof, Robb said. We have Bran's word. We have father's honor. We have the Lannisters' own behavior. It will have to be enough. Catelyn moved toward him. For a moment, she looked as if she might reach for his hand, then checked herself. You ride as Lord Stark in all but name, she said. As my father once did. As your grandfather before him. The men will look to you not just in battle, but when they hunger, when they freeze, when they lose brothers and sons. Do you understand what that means? I do, Robb said. His voice was steady. Do you? She pressed, eyes searching his face. It is one thing to call the banners, another to send boys to die and then look their mothers in the eye when you return and they do not. Robb flinched, but he did not look away. If I do nothing, more will die in the Riverlands with no hope and no help, he said. If I ride, at least they die fighting for something. For justice. For father. Catelyn's gaze softened for a heartbeat. You have your father's stubbornness, she murmured, and his sense of duty. She turned to Jon. And you, she said, you have chosen to go with him. Jon felt the weight of her attention like a physical pressure. I have, he said. Winterfell needs a Stark. It also needs a sword. Robb shouldn't march alone. A frown touched her brow. Winterfell also needs someone to hold it, she said quietly. Rickon is still but a babe. Bran cannot rule yet. If you both ride south. Jon shook his head slowly. If we leave the north leaderless, others will fill the void, he said. Bolton, Umber, any man with enough men at his back. Better to make our presence felt where the game is thickest and leave Winterfell to Luwin and Roderick's care. It had not been an easy conclusion to reach. Jon had argued both sides of it with himself, long into the night. In the end, he could not stomach the thought of Robb riding into war with only the council of older lords whose loyalties were not as simple as they claimed. You may be wrong, Catelyn said. You may both be throwing yourselves into a lion's mouth. We may, Jon agreed, but we may also be the bite the lion doesn't expect. Robb gave him a sharp look that might have been gratitude. Catelyn took a breath. I have been unkind to you, Jon, she said, and the words seemed to cost her. More than once. You remind me of things I would rather forget, of promises your father made and kept from me. For that, I have taken out my hurt on you. Jon had not expected this. He felt suddenly unsteady, as if the floor had dropped an inch. I am not naive enough to think a few words will erase years, she continued. But know this, when you ride with Robb, you ride as a son of this house, whatever your name. I will not have the men see you as anything less. If you fall, her voice caught. If you fall defending him, defending the North, I will mourn you as I would any son. The world seemed to tilt. Jon's throat burned. I "Thank you, my lady," he managed. She nodded once, briskly, as if she'd crossed some narrow bridge and wanted only to put it behind her. "Your father would wish me to say it," she said, "before you go where I cannot follow." From the yard below came the sound of horns, calling the host to order. Robb straightened. "We must go," he said. Catelyn stepped close to him, fingers brushing his cheek. "Remember who you are," she murmured. "Not just a Stark. My son. Your father's son. Do not let them make you hard for the sake of being hard. Choose your ruthlessness carefully." "I will," Robb said. She hesitated, then reached up and pulled him into a hug. He held her tightly. For a moment he looked very young. When she let go, she turned to Jon and, after a heartbeat's hesitation, placed a hand briefly on his arm. "Look after him," she said. "I will," Jon replied, "as he will for me." They left together, the door closing softly behind them. Ghost fell into step, his white fur a blur at the edge of Robb's dark cloak. "Did that truly happen?" Robb asked after a moment, sounding dazed. "My mother. War changes anythings," Jon said. "Sometimes the shape of a heart among them." The King's Road south of Winterfell felt both familiar and strange. Jon had ridden it before, hunting with Robb and Theon, chasing stags that vanished into the wolfswood. He had watched the king's great procession rumble along it, wheels carving deep ruts in the earth. Now it bore the weight of a northern host. Horses clopped steady on the packed dirt. Leather creaked. Men's low voices rose and fell, blending into a constant murmur. Somewhere down the line, someone began a song, rough and off-key. Others took it up, more for rhythm than melody. Robb rode at the front, his shoulders squared, gray wind trotting with easy grace at his stirrup. Jon's horse kept pace, Ghost ranging ahead with that uncanny tirelessness, pausing now and then to sniff at the air or the roadside. The direwolf's presence unsettled some of the new-levied men, but they relaxed as the days went by and they saw how he kept a watchful distance, as likely to warn of a broken wheel as of an approaching stranger. "This road feels longer now," Robb said on the third day. "It knew less weight before," Jon replied. "Fewer hopes and fears riding its length." Robb gave him a sideways look. "Is that Maester's wisdom or yours?" he asked. "Luwin would say it more neatly," Jon admitted. They rode in silence for a while. The land on either side of the road rolled gently, dotted with stands of trees and the occasional lonely farm. Smoke rose from some chimneys. Others sat cold and empty, whether from caution or flight Jon could not say. "Do you ever think," Robb said finally, "about the life you would have had at the wall?" "Less now," Jon said. "Though nights under canvas make me wonder what a black brother's bed is like." "Harder than this, I'd wager," Robb said. "Though you might have had less of the Greyjohns snoring." Behind them, as if on cue, came a tremendous snort. The great Jon was laughing at some jest, his booming voice carrying even over the clatter of hooves. "You'd have had other problems," Robb went on. "Wildlings, cold. The old stories talk of worse things. The dead that walk, the others." Jon glanced northward, though the wall was long out of sight. "I used to dream about it," he said. "Standing watch while snow fell, the world silent around me. A simple duty, hard but clear. No politics, no banners. And now?" Robb asked. "Now I see there is no place without some sort of politics," Jon said. "Even at the wall, men bring their grudges and their pasts. Here," he gestured to the host behind them, "here every banner is a promise and a threat both." Robb's mouth twisted. "You make it sound like a tangle we'll never cut through." "Perhaps swords aren't always the way to cut it," Jon said. "Sometimes you untie a knot instead of hacking it apart." "Spoken like a man who's never had to hack frozen rope in winter," Robb retorted. Jon smiled faintly. "I've done that too," he said. "It doesn't always end with all your fingers." A rider came up from behind then, Roose Bolton, his pale eyes half-lidded. He rode a dappled gray horse that seemed to barely disturb the ground. "My lords," he said, his voice soft. Scouts report a small party ahead. Perhaps merchants, perhaps not. They seem to be waiting rather than traveling. Robb straightened. How far? He asked. An hour's ride, Bolton said. On the road. Show no sign of alarm, Jon murmured. If it's an ambush, better they think us unsuspecting. If it's just frightened small folk, no need to panic them. Robb nodded. We keep the line moving, he said to Bolton. Double the scouts. If they see any hint of Lannister colors, we form ranks. Bolton's eyes flicked to Jon. There was a ghost of a smile on his thin lips. You command with 2 tongues, he said. One for the men, one for the wolves. As long as they run in the same direction, Jon replied. Bolton inclined his head and fell back. The party ahead turned out to be a group of merchants from White Harbor, carts laden with wool and salt fish. They had heard rumors of war and feared to go further south. Robb spoke with their leader, a balding man with nervous hands, and bought what supplies they could spare at a fair price. In return, he gave them a small escort north, a kindness that would travel as swiftly as any raven. That night, camped by a shallow stream, Jon sat by the fire and watched sparks rise into the dark. Men's silhouettes moved around him, some laughing, some quiet. Gray wind gnawed on a bone a little way off. Ghost lay at Jon's back, a warm, silent presence. He thought of Winterfell, of Bran and Rickon and Catelyn watching the road behind them. He thought of the wall, invisible but no less real. He thought of King's Landing, a distant city of stone and whispers. We're in between, he murmured. Ghost's ear twitched, as if in agreement. The command tent smelled of canvas, wax, and damp wool. It was a poor cousin to the solar at Winterfell, but the maps on the table and the weight of decisions being made gave it a gravity all its own. Robb stood hunched over the map of the Riverlands, one hand braced on the table, the other tracing the line of the trident. His shadow loomed long on the canvas wall. Jon stood opposite, palms flat on the edge of the wood. Longclaws hilt a comfortable weight at his side. The Freys will be watching for our banners, Robb said. Old Walder won't let us set foot on his dam bridge until he's counted every spear. He'll open when he sees opportunity, Jon said. He always has. Our task is to give him enough bait without letting him bite too deep. He tapped the map where the twins sat, 2 small towers straddling the river. If we cross here quickly, he went on, we can move down to relieve Riverrun before Tywin can fully tighten his grip. If we delay, we risk being trapped between his host and Jaime's raiders. Robb nodded, jaw tight. We'll have to split the army, he said, as father planned. Send a force west to draw Tywin's eye while the main host moves to the river. You'll need commanders you trust for both, Jon said. Men who won't panic when they don't see your banner. He glanced at the figurines marking northern forces. The great Jon will want the thick of the fighting, he said. Send him with the force that meets Tywin. He'll relish standing in the lion's path. And you? Robb asked. Jon considered. Where you are, he said at last. The men will look to you. You'll need someone to say what you don't have time to see. Robb's mouth twitched. I thought that was my job, he said. It can be ours, Jon replied. You'll have enough crowns on your head without trying to carry a maester's chain as well. Robb huffed. You always did like telling me what I'm missing, he said. Someone cleared his throat outside the tent. Ghost's head came up, ears pricked. A moment later, the flap lifted and Roose Bolton stepped inside, his movements quiet. My lords, he said. Scouts report Lannister outriders 2 days' ride south. They were careful, but not careful enough. Robb straightened. Casualty? He asked. None of ours, Bolton said. We chose not to reveal how far our line extends. For now, they know only that the North marches, not how strongly. Robb nodded. Good, he said. We keep that advantage as long as we can. Bolton's gaze slid to the map. You mean to cross at the twins, he said. It was not a question. We do, Robb said. Old Walder is a cautious man, Bolton said. He will not risk his skin for sentiment, but he will risk it for advantage. Your offer of betrothal may sway him, or it may not. His pale eyes flicked to Jon. You may find yourself promised to a girl who knows how to use a knife. Jon met his gaze. Better a wife with a knife than a bridge that never opens, he said. For a fleeting moment, there was something like amusement in Bolton's eyes. Spoken like a man who expects to live long enough to sample married life, he said. If the gods are kind, Jon replied dryly, and our enemies careless. Bolton inclined his head. I'll see that our men are ready to move at first light, he said. If the Freys play their games, we must be able to respond quickly. When he left, Robb let out a breath. I don't like relying on the Freys, he said. Nor I, Jon said. But for now, they're the gate we must pass. Once we're over, we can decide how much we trust them. He traced a finger from the twins down to Riverrun. This is where we show the realm what the North can do, he said. If we relieve the Tullus and keep Tywin off balance, others will take heart. If we fail, then we'll have fewer allies to share our graves, Robb finished. They looked at each other. In that moment, Jon felt an odd calm settle over him. The choices ahead were brutal. The road they'd taken could easily lead to ruin, but they had chosen it with their eyes open. There was a strange freedom in that. Whatever comes, Jon said, we face it together. Robb extended his hand across the table. Jon took it. The clasp was firm, brother to brother, lord to whatever Jon was becoming. Together, Robb agreed. Outside, the campfires burned against the dark like scattered stars fallen to earth. Beyond them lay the river, the bridge, the lions, and the long, bloody path that might yet lead back to a father in chains. Ghost shifted at the tent's entrance, red eyes gleaming. Jon released Robb's hand and rested his own on Longclaw's hilt. Let's give them a war they'll remember, he said quietly. The night did not answer, but the wind shifted, carrying with it a distant scent of water and smoke.